Let's take a peek at that website just for a quick second. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
That is his
Very
website.
embarrassing. Gotta hire somebody. Anyone want to help me with that?
I went to the Wayback Machine. You can look back at websites in the past. 10 years ago, same website. It has not changed. This is blue text. This is, I don't even know.
The cargo shorts, man.
The cargo shorts.
So
Torrio
2007.
actually uses the same photo for his website.
That's true. You use GeoCities also?
That's amazing. I like how you are so, you have such a career in technology, and then your website, you're like, fuck it.
Cobbler's children, man.
Is this like a retro? Is this like intentional? Were you trying to say, hey, I'm wearing the old
It'll
Converse
be cool again in about 10 years. So
all right,
I'm just
that's
holding
good.
for that.
It's like the Bitcoin's value. It'll fluctuate over time.
Right.
Okay, got it.
All right.
Let's move on.
Wait, what is his musical inspiration? I can't read it, Kevin. What is this?
That's a good point.
I want to get to know
Electronic
Brian.
music, Bill
Okay.
Laswell, yeah,
Right on.
ambient
Alright.
music, that kind of thing.
Yeah, if only you could. Okay.
So as you guys know, we're going to go through Eureka moments. So he's going to ask you guys questions about the technology. You guys are, please raise your hand. We'll come up with the mic and everything, and you guys can answer and then earn the prize. Before we jump into that, just a little bit of background for maybe just, we'll do a little quickie on what is blockchain, what is the importance of it, what are the applications, cryptocurrency, etc.
Right. So yeah, just as a level set, right? There's this broad world of something called blockchain technology, which is something that cryptocurrencies are built on top of, but you can do other things on top of it as well. And a blockchain is you could think of it like a new kind of database in a weird way. It's a database that's decentralized, that's distributed, that is shared. It's as if every one of us here in this room had a copy of a database, and we're all on a network together, and we're all doing business with each other. Maybe we're buying and selling things on a supply chain. Maybe we're keeping track of digital identities. Maybe there's all sorts of things we can do with it. And a blockchain is a way of making sure that each of us can write to this database, and all of us hear it, right? All of us confirm it, and then add it to our copy of the database, so that in the future, it's just like if you published a fact in 100 newspapers of the world, there'd be no way to go back in time and change that fact. Everybody has a copy of it. Everyone's confirmed it, right? And a blockchain is a way to keep track of that. The second cool thing that you have in this world is, well, that's the distributed ledger. The second cool thing is smart contracts. It's a way of putting a piece of software, a program that runs on this network, uses the information from this ledger, as well as other external data, and then when certain conditions are hit, adds another entry to that. And that's a way to do anything from like insurance agreements to payment flows between organizations to all sorts of fun things that are otherwise, contracts that you have to depend upon humans to have to read and execute, and businesses that might fail to have to make good on. This is something that a lot of people are hoping leads to a world that is more accountable, more auditable, more fair. And so that's like the big idea. That's what is getting people excited about this. The cryptocurrency thing builds on top of that because a ledger is a way to keep track of who owns which tokens. And when you want to share or send tokens from one person to another, that's recorded in the ledger, right? Lots more detail to it than we could talk for like hours and hours specifically about how Bitcoin and others work. But hopefully that's like the highest level idea.
So it's putting people out of work, essentially.
It's like all technology.
That's great. But this time it's like insurance agents and lawyers, and who cares about that? That's not
right. And government bureaucrats, too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great.
I think, yeah, definitely one of the most, you gave a great analogy. There's like 100 people in this room, rather than just you having a copy of the database. Now all of us have a copy of the database.
Right. Yeah. Or without having to worry about somebody playing God in the center by keeping a central database and all of us just, feeding in and pulling from. But that person could change that without us being able to account for it.
So it's kind of like if we were all in an orgy and we now all have gonorrhea. Right? Essentially, that's it.
It's the first thing that's been said that makes sense.
Yeah, right? Essentially. Yeah. I know you have gonorrhea because I gave you the gonorrhea.
We all saw it. Yeah.
And as you saw me give you the gonorrhea.
Now we're all the gonorrhea.
We're all the gonorrhea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get
all right,
this. I get how invested.
Show's over.
You all have gonorrhea. Congratulations.
I confirmed it on Kevin's blockchain a year ago.
Yeah. It's gone up in value, though. Yeah, my gonorrhea is like $18,000.
All right, we'll go right into the questions now. That
Let's
was
do it.
great. That was a great foundation. So go ahead and read them off, and you guys.
All right. So what is the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum?
We had a hand over here. Right?
And this is really like, if you could summarize each of these as like, you know, what are they most good for? What are they really focused on, et cetera? The big difference between them.
Well, the way I understand it is Ethereum is sort of a Bitcoin 2.0 because it implements smart contracts.
That guy works for Ethereum. He's just like, yeah, well, as far as I know, Ethereum's better.
Anyone have a better answer?
Actually,
Dis? Uh-oh.
so
Are you going to finger snap too?
Hold on, let me mansplain
It's
you.
like a
So-
Mean Girls response.
Ethereum is a platform. Bitcoin is an application of a platform. Bitcoin is a currency. Ethereum is just a platform you can build, like another Bitcoin, which is a lot of coins are built on Ethereum network today. So this is where the smart contracts comes from. Bitcoin is just the currency concept of it.
Very
sound
close.
correct?
There's one more phrase associated with Ethereum that they
Ooh,
say
that's
is in their
really
mission
close.
statement. It's really close.
Oh, man.
So Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency, and it's based on a blockchain. Ethereum is based on a blockchain, but it has smart contract capabilities, and it is a platform that you build on top of. And let's see what else. Oh, it's going to go to proof of stake as opposed to proof of work.
You know what? Close. Anyone? There's a two-word. There's a two-word phrase for Ethereum. It starts. The initials are G and C.
Global computer.
Thank you. Eureka.
Eureka! Come on down.
And I'd give come on down. I'd give the other
Fuck
guys
y'all up.
consolation prizes because they're kind of
Sweet.
close.
I thought you were just going to say they're spelled differently. And like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the difference.
Well, and they are two different currencies.
They are two
You can
different
buy and sell
currencies.
Ethereum just like, hey.
Oh,
yeah,
we've
good
met
to see you
before. All right, and what's your name, sir?
Steve.
Steve, are you involved? Do you invest in any of this? Or?
I am blockchain.
You are blockchain?
Oh.
Dude, this has gotten
Yeah.
very metaphysical. Let's make you stand away from the.
I am blockchain.
You are blockchain? How long have you had this identity? What were you before blockchain? What did your mother
say I.
name you?
I don't know.
Oh no! Wow. You are blockchain because, bitch, you are the blockchain right here. Oh! Look at that! Put it on, my friend.
Right on.
Look, you have pimped it out. You really are blockchain, my friend. You were not lying.
Daddy.
All right. Good job, buddy.
You just ruined his $6,000 suit.
Give Mr. Blockchain a round of applause. And buy him a drink later. He's an important man. I don't know what he does, but he must be.
Do you have the graphic for this?
Yes. All right.
All right, so I don't know if anyone ever saw this tweet, but the tweet behind this was the difference between a Bitcoin developer and an Ethereum developer. And I know it's
Is
a
the
little
answer
funny.
Molly?
Pretty much, right? No, actually, I don't know who the guy on the left is. He's a Bitcoin developer. Some of you might be able to say. The guy on the right is Vlad Zamfir, who's one of the core developers of Ethereum. And there's kind of a cultural difference between these two. Bitcoin is about like payments and about store of value, and let's just use it for money, right? And Ethereum really does want to attempt to be a global computer, using cryptocurrency as the base, but being able to build lots of different apps on top. And it's pretty ambitious. It's pretty idealistic, which is why like their spirit animals are unicorns and rainbows and things like that. I'm dead serious. But culturally and cats, we're getting to
They
that.
have spirit
Wait.
animals?
So the Bitcoin guy is the guy with the axe and machete?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, keep investing in this guy's thing. That's good. Yeah, it's not your fault when it all. Okay.
And maybe Brian Armstrong, the founder of Coinbase, he was recently speaking about this on Bloomberg, and I thought he did a really good job of articulating the difference as well about Bitcoin being used for A to B transaction and Ethereum being the software that we can program and make so many new applications, make it easy for people to make these and to access them.
And there's a hope you could do things like a decentralized Uber or a decentralized eBay or a decentralized Airbnb with Ethereum, where that'd be a little bit harder with Bitcoin.
But based on these photos, it's clear that Bitcoin's going to murder Ethereum. I mean, I don't see it lasting that long. That dude is
Ethereum won't see
dead.
it coming. Yeah.
No, I think he's got tassels or something in his hand. I don't know what he's doing. He has to run.
And another thing that he said was that Bitcoin is kind of like gold, in the sense that it is only 21 million coins will ever be in circulation, and that it therefore becomes a deflationary currency. Whereas with Ethereum, it was that because this is a payment network and it's programmable, it's going to follow a moderate inflation curve over time.
Right. Well said.
Yeah.
No, I think
Brian's
their goal
smart.
is for it to be, their inspiration is gold, that this is a new kind of asset. That's a bit challenging when there's forks and multiple copies and multiple different kinds of currencies. But certainly that's, I think, and in a way, it's hard to tell whether the current rush is because it really can be like this new kind of independent store of value, or it's like Beanie Babies 2.0. Like, we'll find out.
Yeah, you guys know gold's real, right? Like you can touch it, give it to someone. Okay.
Validate
No,
that.
yeah, all right. Fair enough.
You'll be able to touch some coins.
I
later.
guess.
Yeah, we got some coins for you. All
All
right,
right,
let's
let's move on
yeah.
to the next question.
How much energy does a single Bitcoin transaction consume in kilowatt hours, or in comparison to the amount of energy a household uses?
All right, we have an
Okay.
answer.
About 20 kilowatt hours or 9 houses worth of energy per transaction.
That's wrong on the kilowatt hours and
two.
wrong. No, no,
200.
not close.
But I was going to give it to you. You sounded like you were correct.
The confidence was there for
you
sure.
Look like you'd know.
Yeah.
Right order of magnitude, but wrong. Yeah, not close.
Is it 273 kilowatts?
Should we start doing higher or lower kinds of things? Okay, lower than that.
Lower than that.
1.
Ding, 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 ding.
The price is right. Higher than 1.
Higher than
Higher
1.
than 20.
Higher than 20. Anyone else? 70?
I'm going to say close. Who said
Oh,
70?
yeah. Where was that?
Okay, yeah. You said 70?
70.
Oh, yeah. So it was 77 kilowatt hours, or the amount. Oh, Eureka!
All right, Eureka! Come on down.
77 kilowatt hours is also the amount of energy that an average American household consumes in a week, right? And this is the amount of energy that is consumed if I send Bitcoins to you and that gets recorded in the ledger. It costs that much energy to confirm that transaction across the network.
And did you know that?
I had an idea.
You just guessed.
I had an idea. It was close to that. So
Dude, the shoes! They're so pimpin'!
Oh
What's up?
When do you teach us tap dancing?
No, this is from Lindy Hop, swing dance.
Okay, swing dancing. Okay. Oh, you were just.
Spectator shoes.
So you wear these shoes to watch the dancing?
No, it's called spectator when you actually dance and you wear the spectator shoes.
So then there's spectators of the spectator dance.
Yes, you got it.
This is even more confusing than Bitcoin. Did you guys know that?
I did not.
I know everything, but yeah.
Yes, it should. All right, what's your name, sir?
Viv.
Viv, all right, we got you this great book, Digital Gold, Bitcoin, and the inside story of the misfits and millionaires trying to reinvent money. Woo! There you go, sir. Give him a round of applause.
Good job.
This is one of the few crowds where I feel like a book is like a good gift. They're like, yeah!
So the right image for this question is either the house on fire or it's mining rigs. And I'm sure since half of you, I mean, this is a pretty friendly crowd, so a lot of you probably know this, but the way that Bitcoin works is because it's a global network, trying to figure out who gets to put the next transaction into the ledger is a really big problem, right? Because you have all these people wanting to submit these transactions and all these people trying to, and you have to put them in the right order because you don't want somebody to send the same Bitcoin to 2 people, right? So how does the network converge on an answer for who gets to put the next block, literally, in the chain? And that's by running a big lottery, right? It's by basically rolling the die in the form of running a mathematical algorithm which you don't know the answer ahead of time, but you have 1 in a huge number chance of hitting, right? And this is called mining. This is called hashing. This is called securing the blockchain. But it's basically a way of figuring out across this network, everybody is rolling the die billions, a trillion times a second. I don't know how many terahashes there are out there. And somebody gets the right answer about once every 10 minutes. And that person then gets to bundle all of these outstanding transactions into a block, put that into the ledger, and then everyone tries again. And this is incredibly inefficient from one point of view. It's millions of people and so many CPUs rolling the die, trying to figure out who gets to put the next link in the chain. There's no productive output to that. But you could compare that to the cost of mining gold, which is like 10 times this, literally mining, pulling out of the ground gold, right? So there's lots of debates in this community about whether burning this much energy is actually worthwhile, or what does it replace today or could potentially replace in the future.
You follow that?
Yeah, but then you have real gold.
Yeah. What about the real gold?
That's the downside, yeah.
And that was actually a really good point that you just brought up, is that it actually costs more to mine gold. I didn't even think about that. Everyone's like, this is so expensive.
Has anyone here ever paid anything in gold? Just curious if anyone said, yeah, I got a gold nugget in my pocket. Just 1 second. I'm going to get that Slim Jim. Nobody? Okay. Just asking.
So this
Silence.
I think it's funny that you'd only get one Slim Jim. Yeah, here's my gold nugget.
Here's
Give me
my
the
gold
Slim
nugget.
Jim.
Well, yeah, it's a very expensive Slim Jim.
So is anyone familiar with Ordos, the Chinese city, Ordos? So there was this ghost town that China built, trying to send a bunch of people to go and live there and get excited about living there, and nobody was like, I'm not moving there. And so no one moved there. And now recently they started just building tons of Bitcoin mining systems inside of that city. And so that city is now, China's actually is over half of the world's major Bitcoin mining pools, which is kind of crazy. That's people who work together to mine in a collective fashion, so that if one of them strikes the right block on the blockchain, the right math, then they will all reap the reward. And I just thought that was crazy that China's so...
But it's very dystopian. It's like, first you need to build a ghost town. No one lives there. Then we mine imaginary money that will put people out of jobs. Welcome to the future.
I think it's a perfect underdog story.
Woo! There we go. That's basically it. And Ordos sounds like a mythical city that's floating in the sky or something, right? It's like a new Marvel movie features Ordos. I don't know.
This is just crazy. It's nuts. And maybe this can maybe explain a little bit, and we'll get into this a little bit later. But so Bitcoin created in 2008, had 10-year head start over other people, was 95% of the total market cap. Now is only 50 or 60% of the total market cap.
Yeah, there's lots of other currencies now. I think that's one of our questions.
It is. We're gonna. It was leading in. We're about to jump in.
All
so
right.
let's. Yeah. Do you want to touch base on anything else about electricity or?
No, just and again, it's hard to get a sense of scale for these, and there's a lot of approaches that people in the Bitcoin community are exploring to try to cut the energy cost of each transaction. There's things called the Lightning Network. There are ways of taking transactions off-chain, as they call it, and then bringing it back in bulk. So there's lots of people working hard to try to solve that problem.
And just one more time, just to make sure, is that these things are just whizzing away trying to compute what the next block, the ledger, is going to look like.
They're playing a game. They're rolling the die, and one in a quadrillion or whatever rolls the die, turns out to elect the winner who gets to put the next block in the chain. Am I basically describing it right?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, good.
And then, but if you use your computer at home and you just run your own, you have a much lower chance of succeeding than if you have 10,000 computers that are all processing way faster.
But if you join a pool, you can get a share of the reward. Right. Yep. So that's why, I mean, it's not economically, I don't think it's even, you won't mine more than the cost of electricity to mine at home anymore, right? The systems like in that mining rig are like highly tuned custom chips to be able to do this very simple calculation over and over and over.
So if you mine at home, you actually lose money.
Yeah, but if you don't pay for your electricity, like you live in your parents' home,
Okay.
and you know
You
they
hear
don't
this?
notice the.
This is the
Comedians, we can sign up for
Wow,
that.
he looked right
All
at you
right.
when he said that.
There's a news article recently about Tesla owners who were going to the, because Tesla owners get free electricity from the charging stations that Tesla runs, and plugging into those stations mining rigs because again they don't pay for the electricity.
Hey, if you can own a Tesla, you're poor enough to need to mine Bitcoin.
All right, we have a
Come on,
quick
who does
audience
that?
question before we move on.
Brian, could you clarify? I thought you were talking about, you were talking about transaction cost, but what you referred to in terms of the power and the amount of time that's used, I thought that was a reference to what it takes to create a Bitcoin. But so there's energy to create a Bitcoin, right? And then there's all this energy to update the ledgers. So can you clarify what's going on?
We play fast and loose.
Don't mind, I'll take this one.
All right, you take care of it, Torio. Torio's been living in his mother's basement for 10 years. He knows mining. He literally mines for gold. That's the strange thing. It's like, wow, it's just cement floor, but okay.
The terminology mining makes it sound like this rolling of the die actually creates a unique thing, and it doesn't. What happens is when somebody hits that reward and they get to collect the mining fees, or the pool gets to collect the mining fees, they also get a reward of 25 new Bitcoin that are manufactured out of thin air and added to the ledger, right? Is it 25 still, or is it half?
It's 12.5.
I'm sorry, it's right, I forgot the halving. And so that reward will be cut in half every couple of years to the point where it goes to zero, at which point this whole system is supposed to work just from fees that people pay on their transactions. And these fees are non-zero. I mean, recently with all of the transactions going through the system, you've seen fees as high, because it's kind of like an open auction for whose transactions get cleared first. You have to pay more. There's some of them have been as high as $40 for a transaction, which is awfully hard to justify if you're like buying a cup of coffee.
And your little 15-cent tip is going to be backlogged way further. It might take half hour. Yeah.
Right, and it can
That's
take
just
some
on
time to confirm it.
Bitcoins, and then there's different cryptocurrencies that do fast, etc.
Right, and that's where some of these coins are starting to differ, is figuring out, can we cut the cost of these fees? Can we handle more transactions per second? That sort of thing. And it's why we're just at the beginning of the technology roadmap for these technologies.
All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
Let's
do
jump
it.
into the next question.
So what is the highest price paid ever in Bitcoin for pizza?
All right.
At least recorded. Somebody might have quietly done it and never.
All right.
Just turning
this factoid. Somebody.
I'm not. Wait, where'd you go?
I just turned the air conditioning on. It's going to get a little.
The amount of energy that will
That's
consume.
25,000?
No.
No. Is that
Lower.
high or low?
It's lower than that.
Lower than that.
1462.
Lower than that. I'm sorry. What, you mean like 1462? Higher than that.
What kind of pizza?
2,500.
Higher.
2,500.
10,000.
10,000. Yes.
Eureka!
Eureka!
Woo!
Come on.
Come on down.
And technically, it was for two pizzas, two Papa John's pizzas
Wow.
in 2010, right when the network just got started, and it was actually possible to probably mine a few Bitcoin a day off of your laptop or more.
You a fan of pizza?
Yep.
You a fan of frozen pizza? Frozen pizza.
Let me feel that. That is not frozen anymore.
It was frozen at some point in its existence. It's been hanging out in the back, but look, it's Red Baron. There's nothing.
It doesn't worth 10,000.
No, how many Bitcoins would you pay for this that will give you botulism?
Maybe one Satoshi.
Once you touch it?
Satoshi.
One Satoshi. Okay, that's very little. And what's a Satoshi?
A Satoshi is 1/1000th of a Bitcoin.
Okay, I thought that was a sex act. Okay, that makes sense. I just got Satoshi cleaned up. Give him a round of applause. And I'm sorry that you have to hold that pizza for the rest of the show. That's
Now, 10,000 Bitcoin, I mean, you do the math, right?
Just to clarify, because there's isn't it 100 million Satoshi, right?
Am I wrong? Okay.
Okay, so it's okay.
no pizza for
You're
you.
wrong. It's like, come on.
It's a millionth or 100 million?
100 million
Okay. I'm
Satoshi
sorry.
per Bitcoin. So then there's like 2.1 quadrillion or some 21 quadrillion total units that can be moved.
And is that the only increment that's named? The
I believe
Satoshi?
so.
There's no other.
Yeah, because then the Bitcoin breaks up into 100 million Satoshis. Yeah.
And
Which
everyone
makes it
knows who
easier to-
Satoshi is.
That's what they
You
call my
shouldn't.
penis.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
I get it because it's 100 millionth. Yeah, it's good. That's a good. That's accurate.
Confidence boosting. Do you have a photo of the Satoshi to document? No? All right. Can't.
Go ahead and explain. Who is this Satoshi?
Right. So Satoshi Nakamoto is a person we think. No idea what gender is. Some of you might have met him and are keeping that a secret. He is the person who published the Bitcoin paper in 2008, and then followed that up with the first implementation of Bitcoin, 2009 or 2008. Some of you might know, but roughly about that time. And then was obviously active in explaining to people why it's a good idea, how it works, helping build it, and then went quiet, what, about 2010, 2011? Someone remembers when his last post was? Okay. And nobody has ever really met him. There have been a couple of people who've claimed to be him. One person who tried to pass a signature off that was actually a recycled old signature, kind of like taking a photocopy of the Picasso at the bottom of a painting and saying, look, I'm Picasso, right? But no one has successfully proven that they were Satoshi. And if Satoshi is alive, he'd be one of the top, I forget exactly, does anybody know how many billions he would have? He'd be one of the wealthiest people on the planet because of that share that he has.
And furthermore, we're not quite sure if it was just one person or if it was a group
Could be
of
multiple.
people. Or furthermore, I've heard recently that it could have been an artificial intelligence that came up with blockchain.
Some people think it's Elon Musk.
Does anyone here have an idea who it is? Want to shout it out? Go ahead. Don't worry. We won't let anyone else know.
To be.
Animal chip. Oh, chin. Animal chin. Someone, I have no idea what I've seen. I'll Google it. All right, I'll Google animal chin.
All the best jokes end in Google it.
So, and I think a really important takeaway from
you Google goatsy.
A really important reason why this is up here is just to get the grasp that back in the day in 2008, 2009, 2010, Bitcoins were worth like 8 cents. So now Bitcoins are worth $17,000.
And if all of you are feeling bad for not having invested in it back then, don't worry, you're in really good company. If you did, congrats, and you'll hopefully buy us around. But hindsight is perfect, right? And think of every company out there that has 1 billion shares outstanding and is worth hundreds of billions, right? At one point, their stock was worth pennies as well.
And furthermore is, at least if you invest money into like something like Amazon, you know, oh, this is Amazon. They actually go and distribute all these goods across the world, and et cetera. And versus Bitcoin, you kind of just have to be like, oh, like, is this money going to be lost forever or not? But I just one last thought around this is just that. 1 second. I had a really good point that I want to share. Oh yeah. So in that 2008, 2009, 2010, there were people that purchased these Bitcoins. A lot of them were people that used the dark web, people that purchased drugs or et cetera, whatever, Molly, the good stuff. And so they went ahead and purchased, maybe 1,000 of these coins that were only worth 8 cents a piece. And now, because we have no identifiers to who any of the owners are, there could be billionaires roaming amongst us, and we just have absolutely no idea. And if no one's, if they don't have a nice home or a nice car or whatever, it just be, it's just crazy to think that there's a whole amount of dozens or hundreds of people, thousands even, that are billionaires that are walking amongst us.
Yeah, not only that, but you mentioned if they initially bought it because they're buying, like creepy stuff on the dark web, Bitcoin's basically is like just an reward for like child pedophile. It's like, here, you bought this creepy stuff, now you're worth millions of dollars. It's kind of a creepy
You're
notion.
all child pedophiles. That's what he's saying.
Oh, full-grown pedophiles, not child pedophiles. Child pedophiles.
It's not even that bad.
They're not even there yet. Yeah, that's totally fine.
It would have taken a really long amount of time for anything to have happened if it wasn't for the dark web push. We probably wouldn't be to where we are
Let me,
today.
let me
go
wear my
ahead.
EFF hat a little bit too and say, like, almost every new technology that comes out does end up getting used for illicit or purposes outside of norm, right? Because it often is the marginal communities, the ones that are on the outs, that actually pick these things up so they can get something done, they can investigate it and push the envelope on it. So I don't think that's that unusual. And the reality is, once anybody who's earned that kind of money, when they try to like actually cash it out and do something with it, then they kind of decloak, right? And well, that's how we'll find out who Satoshi is, because one day if he tries to actually buy a cup of coffee with his holdings, lots of lights will go up everywhere, and we'll try to figure out who that is.
I think that's
Danced all night to Satoshi.
Dance all night to Satoshi. Yeah, because there's
Just to
child
clarify,
pedophile. That's all I'm trying
to clarify, every 10 minutes when a new block's made on the blockchain, it has a ledger of all the transactions that have ever been done. Period. So you're saying that we're looking at 10 years of these blocks, and there was a time that Satoshi or whoever this creator is had whatever 1 million bitcoins, and then that number with that key has stayed the same for all these coins. So we will know the moment that changes.
The moment that he starts to spend his money or send his money anywhere, that'll light up. Because he will have signed it with his private key to prove that he is who he is, so he can spend that money. Now, people can register more than one address, right? And you can move coins through these things called mixers and things like that. But no one should.
What's a mixer?
Mixer is kind of like saying,
he is a DJ.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
It's a way to try to put coins into a bucket and then have them come out without kind of that history, that traceability, right?
What?
But
this is real?
This is it's quasi money laundering. I mean, you could say, and frankly, the Department of Justice and other people out there actually are, one thing they love about the Bitcoin ledger and other cryptocurrency ledgers, most of them, is that traceability. There are whole divisions of the Department of Justice like using that to try to map crime networks, because every time it's like spend a Bitcoin to get back your files from some malware or something like that, right? That lights up an address. And they're fans of this. And we shouldn't believe that blockchains are anonymous. I'll put an asterisk on that, though, which is there is research being done in something called zero-knowledge proofs. In fact, a currency called Zcash, and I think Monero has some of this too, which is intended to try to allow people to get their privacy back for spending cash. Because frankly, I kind of like having my privacy. I like being able to buy a chocolate bar without my health insurance company knowing about it, right? And I think most people do, right?
Yeah. And it's legal to like wash those Bitcoins, right? You can kind of mix them up.
Well, it isn't illegal yet specifically. Money laundering is still illegal. So if you're doing it specifically to hide criminal intent, it is. Right. And you do see governments shutting down some of these mixers to try to keep that money traceable. So they haven't yet shut down Zcash or others, and I don't think they will.
My wife actually mines Zcash in our studio, like 5 feet from the bed. Mm-hmm. It's like a nonstop like heater, just humming the entire time, and with like $100 of Zcash in there. I don't know what we're going to do with it.
Buy things on the dark web.
Okay, great. Okay, that sounds good. Back to my child pedophilia jokes.
So we are potentially moving into a ledger where you don't need to. You can still keep your privacy. There are a couple people working on that. Yeah. All right, let's have that lead in the next question then.
How many different cryptocurrencies have been launched?
How many?
All right. Answer over here.
Around 300?
Higher.
300. Higher than 300.
About 1,200?
1,200.
Close.
Close.
You want to? Your call.
Keep going. We have more hands. Let's see.
No, he didn't get a prize. Okay, Eureka.
Close.
It's 1,300.
It's 1,300. Get out here.
All right, Eureka. Come on up.
Close.
All right. What's your name, sir?
Carl.
Carl. All right. You know Brian.
No, but I hope to.
Okay, that's, you just said, hey, Brian, when you asked your first question, I thought you guys were friends or something. No. Personable. That's good. Do you know a lot about cryptocurrency, blockchain?
I'm writing a bit about it in a book I'm working on about a performance-based capital structure for companies that raise venture capital in a public offering. And I thought I was done with it, but I have so many people who are in the Bitcoin blockchain space who are attracted to it, because if a Bitcoin or some kind of currency is going to be considered a security, you have this question of how do you value it? And the model I'm talking about, the fair share model, doesn't require a value to be placed on future performance at the time of the offering. So,
Right, no value on future performance. That's what I tell my dates when I was dating. Like, fluctuates.
well, what it does is it's a bunch of tradable, non-tradable stock held by employees that votes, and it converts into tradable stock that investors have based on performance milestones. So it.
Well, they got Bitcoin futures now.
Yeah, but that's sort of a different thing.
I like what he's talking about, because what he's actually talking about is in many of these currency systems, you can actually try to design outcomes and mechanisms that lend to the kind of corporate governance that we might all want. I mean, it's really fun to make fun of corporate overlords and the way that venture capital works and other things, and the adverse incentives it creates, especially for those of us who are just employees of these companies. And there's the potential for a lot of innovation, and we'll talk about that next, actually, to design these companies and the way that equity works and shares work to be more pro-employee and more equitable, frankly.
And quick question, do you know who Satoshi is?
Yes.
You do? Who is he?
Reputationally. No,
okay, yes, okay. Well, I'm going to show you a photo of Satoshi. That is your gift. Here he is, folks. Cover of Time magazine.
It was me the whole time.
It was Andrew. He just lets his hair down right there. Give him a round of applause. Good luck on your book, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And this didn't turn up too well, but there's, what was it, cryptocurrency.info or something like that has a chart of all of them. It washes out. But
it does, but can we do it one more time just to go over some of these? So what is that?
That's Bitcoin.
What's the second one?
Ethereum.
What's the third one?
Bitcoin Cash, which is a fork.
What's fourth?
Litecoin.
What's fifth?
IOTA.
And
Ripple.
And
a Dash.
Okay, so these are. Can we say that the Pareto principle applies to this? That these top 20% of all cryptocurrencies account for 80% of all transactions that are occurring?
I think that's roughly how it works out. Yeah, and I mean they differ and they
Thank
specialize, and things like Bitcoin Cash are trying to be more backed about payments. Whereas Bitcoin, it turns out it's hard for a currency to be simultaneously both a store of value and a cheap way to buy things. Right? It's not impossible, but it's hard. And right now there's a philosophical split between people involved in the Bitcoin community, and some of them formed a splinter group, a splinter currency really, called Bitcoin Cash, and it's interesting. It's interesting that this can happen. It wouldn't happen you wouldn't think of the dollar splitting into $2, from a different,
Or Google splitting or whatever, like a company or a cash or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So now, why don't you were talking about this a little bit just a couple seconds ago, or you were a little even before that. What are these other cryptocurrencies? We talked about only the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum,
right?
But like, what the hell's Litecoin? Why is that important, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, every one of them has a history, right? And I mean, in some ways, this is like the open source movement. Open source software has been characterized by when people disagree, they can go their own way. They can fork, as you call it. And this is healthy. This is kind of like what happens in nature when species break off into the form, the tree of life, right? Like, they specialize, they find their niche. They find a group of true believers, of people who believe in some philosophy, one over the other. For Zcash, for example, it's about privacy. For Tezos, it's about something called governance on chain, which we can talk about in a bit. But there's as many different opinions about how to build these kinds of currency systems, and even underneath that, these blockchain systems, as it seems like there are every 10 developers out there.
Can you just tell us which one we should buy so we can become rich?
No, I'm not your financial advisor.
That's why everyone came here. They want to know where.
So earlier we were talking about how with something like Bitcoin, it takes about 10 minutes for your transaction to be verified on the blockchain, and sometimes even longer if you're not paying enough of a tip. But with things like Litecoin that can speed it up, you can actually use that at like a coffee shop.
Well, they're going to compete. And ironically, the busier that these chains are, the more congested they get. Maybe not ironically, right? So in some ways, I mean, there are some constraints to these, and there are people trying to bust those constraints open, right? Kind of put express lanes on the freeway, right? But if one set of freeways is clogged, these are ways to have other sets of freeways, other transactions. But the downside is, there probably are many more places, that you can buy and sell Bitcoin or spend Bitcoin at than there are Litecoin or Monero or others. And so, it's not like Visa, MasterCard, American Express right now.
Actually, Torio, before the show, was like, I prefer to be paid in Bitcoin. And we were like, about that.
Yeah, 25 Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, actually, it was
That's my fee.
0.0002.
That's my fee.
Yeah, it was like a millionth of a
So-
Bitcoin. We'll
Yeah.
pay you for the show.
We'll
All
talk
right,
about
next
it.
question.
Wait, Kevin. One more thing. You were talking about IOTA, Tezos. What are these cryptocurrencies that do things even further more about like governance, or what is the significance of this?
Each one of them will have a story to tell. Each one of them has, it's like Marvel Comics characters, right? Each one of them, bit by a radioactive spider or something like that. And the significance is something we're still figuring out. A lot of them will start from a different philosophy, but whether they actually achieve that is something that's hard to tell ahead of time. So it's not even something I feel qualified to come up and say. I could give you the tagline for a lot of these, right? Zcash is about transaction privacy. Monero, I don't know what Monero really is about. Anyone want to throw it out? Frankly, a lot of this, though, is driven by people who are like, what Bitcoin did, going from pennies to hundreds or thousands of dollars, I want to see happen too, right? So some of it is about this kind of promotional kind of like, can we make lightning strike twice, or can we get that same effect and hype it and hype it and hype it?
IOTA here.
Okay.
IOTA's it says it's blockless.
What they do is a little bit differently. Instead of one global ledger, it's more kind of a mesh network of kind of point-to-point kind of clusters of ledgers that are connected to each other, because their target is for, like the name suggests, the Internet of Things devices. So that, devices might talk to each other. A car might talk to a parking meter and say, I'd like to park here for an hour, and then that gets cleared, and clearing happens very locally, rather than having to go through a big central ledger to make that happen, but still ultimately is trustworthy.
It's a good example. Pull up the car next to the parking meter, both IoT enabled, transaction happens right there, etc.
Right.
Cool.
Great. All right, now we're moving on. The next question.
All right. What does ICO stand for?
And what's the significance?
Significance of ICO.
And tell me what an ICO is.
Do we have a hand over here? Yeah? You want to go for it? Yeah. And then significance?
It's a new token being offered. New blockchain?
A little bit more.
It could, when you're first selling coins publicly?
Right. Okay, yep, Eureka. I'll give you
Eureka?
that.
All right.
Yeah.
You pumped about
I was
that?
jacked for that one.
Were you jacked for that one? Do you know what an ICO is?
Nope. Initial coin offering. I
Okay,
guess I
now
do.
you
I had
know.
no idea.
All right. Do you invest in any cryptocurrency?
I'm about to.
Are you really? Damn. What's your name, sir?
Brian.
Fine. All right. Well, we have our own Eureka ICO. We're offering our currency right now. We're going to give you some of it. You want to open up our little treasure chest?
It looks like that's from SpongeBob.
It could be. Oh, look at all this, huh? Look at all this gold.
Is there chocolate in
These
it?
are chocolates. You guys want a chocolate?
Oh, you're so sweet.
Oh, look at how sweet he
He's
is.
sharing right away.
You must have shared with everyone in kindergarten.
These are
That's
worth
great. Give a round of
$17,000.
applause, and maybe he'll give you some of the candy.
So an ICO is initial coin offering. It is a way of launching either a cryptocurrency, like we saw that big list, or actually launching an application on top of something like Ethereum that has the ability to do that. And famously, Bitcoin actually launched without an ICO. Bitcoin, all that happened on day one is a couple of people started mining and generated a lot of Bitcoin, and then that came down, right? But Ethereum, when it launched, actually said, okay, to start out with, there'll be, does anyone remember, is it 15 million coins or 10 million? I think it was 10 million-ish coins. And we'll reserve 1 million of those coins for a nonprofit Ethereum foundation that will steward and manage and kind of be an organization to try to promote the development of this. And the other 14 million will sell kind of on an open floating market. And I think they raised and the money that came in went to the foundation, right? As well as this, what's called pre-mine, these 1 million tokens. So the Ethereum Foundation launched this and raised that money, and that was enough to start paying for developers to continue to build this, and for, you know, kind of like the Sierra Club equivalent, but for the Ethereum community. And now, you know, I mean, they raised a little bit of money that was healthy, it got things kicked off, but the real value now comes from that pre-mine, as they call it, the 1 million tokens, which now at the current price of Ethereum, I think is $500 million. So that's a pretty well-funded nonprofit.
Wow.
Anyone here own Ethereum? Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
And just to extend that, and these days, ICOs are being suggested as a way for startup companies to go and sell shares, essentially, portions of the company that you could buy as tokens that give you some sort of right. It might not be something that looks like equity. It might look more like the right to store a file on a network that's being built by this company, right?
Your right
Or
to
call
save
into an
as on a
API.
file?
In some ways, you could characterize it as kind of Kickstarter for API calls, right? But other ways, as an alternative to, you know, the kind of slogging up and down Sandhill Road or having to play the startup venture capital game, an alternative way to raise that capital. It's pretty controversial, though, and and just today the SEC slapped down, I think it was Munchie, like this Munchie ICO, which was to be a cryptocurrency for reviewing restaurants, like a Yelp kind of thing. But there's a lot of zaniness right now, which you see in the early days of any technology sector, but ultimately I think it'll settle down and we'll figure out the right things to do with these ICOs.
Do you guys in here, how many of you have raised money before? Arm. So has anyone raised money via an ICO before?
Oh, right here.
Over here and up there.
Up there.
That's
all right.
awesome. And there are, like you were saying, there's obviously benefits. You can crowdfund all of your company through an ICO and give them a piece of it. There's also negatives, as they might not be able to get a VC that has a really good background that can help maybe catalyze their success, but they can bring on advisors, etc.
What was your ICO called? D-Market? Okay.
Cool.
Munchies is available too, apparently. I'm not SEC slam that one
We
down.
have a graphic that we can maybe...
Yeah, so, you know, just to mention some, I mean, very large numbers. Tezos, I mentioned, they are another kind of cryptocurrency. They raised $230 million in their ICO. EOS, another one, could raise $185 million. Gnosis, which is like a prediction market platform, raised $13 million, a bit more modest there. And I forget what the numbers are in total, but it's approaching the amount of money that's being invested in startup companies, you know, as almost like an equivalent, right? Like there's a tremendous amount of money going in through these channels. So, and you know, they're coming from a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't invest in startup companies or have the time or the connections, frankly. So there's positives, but also some negatives, right? It introduced a lot of others who, you know, are looking for ways to flush capital through a system and then come out with something at the other end of that. So it's, you know, as a startup company, I mean, I've raised money too. You don't just want dumb money. Sometimes you want money that comes with somebody who can help you grow the business. But sometimes people who claim they can help you grow their business really can't anyways. So like, it's kind of a trade-off, right?
Let's keep going. Let's jump
roll.
right into the next one.
Name 3 other things blockchains are being used for today. And I think this is a 3-part. If people want to name like one at a time, we can do. Can we do 3 serial Eurekas?
Insurance.
Eureka.
Eureka, that's one. You got to give 3 though. We're gonna all.
Oh, you want to?
package? Yeah. All 3.
One person get all 3. Okay. Can you name 2 more?
Payment verification.
So
payment verification.
That's still kind of like what we've been talking about here with coins and things like that. You want to keep going?
I don't.
Okay. Well, close
Could he
though.
say insurance 3 times in a row? Would that work?
Okay, so
Supply chain.
yes.
Yeah.
Track and tracing things like pharmaceutical pills.
Yes.
And digital rights for music industry.
Yes. Eureka.
Boom, Eureka,
Right
nailed
on.
it. Come on down.
She didn't even use insurance. I would have done that.
That was a freebie.
That was a free. Yeah, that was a free one.
All right.
So good.
Look at this. All right. And so do you invest in cryptocurrency?
I have a little bit in Bitcoin.
Do you really? How much is a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Like, how much do you make?
It's confidential. She doesn't want to reveal it. She has a lot of fucking Bitcoin, people. Look at that. You're glittering right now. This is real gold. That's amazing. I cannot believe it. All right. So you're familiar with the technologies then? We have this book for you, Blockchain, The Ultimate Guide to the World of Blockchain Technology, if you want to bone yourself up on some well, not bone up on knowledge. Don't Satoshi me here, man. This is, if you want to bone up on the knowledge, or bone yourself up, you could do that too, but I don't recommend that. Give her a round of applause for that awkward exchange, huh?
That was so good. That was like 4 answers and 2 people. That was pretty, that was pretty excellent.
Well, and I mean, it's almost a gimme because there's so many different things that it's being applied to. I mean, the ones that we threw up there, identity management. So, large national IDs kind of systems are looking at using and are starting to adopt it. Food track and trace, as she mentioned. There's a fish supply chain project out there and a pork supply chain. Basically, as ways to try to track foodborne illness, right? And with all these different suppliers putting things into the system. Actually, we'll have a graphic later that'll talk about this. There's a blockchain beer out there that has like a QR code. You can scan it, but it'll give you like the ingredients and kind of where it came from. It's kind of cool. Settlement networks of all sorts. We talked about payments, but equity settlement, cross-border payment flows. Like, there's basically no part of the financial industry that doesn't involve ledgers and accounting at some point, and all of that can be remade through these technologies.
And then
sorry.
The kitties.
Well, and the diamonds, I'll mention just that first.
The diamonds.
So one of the coolest applications, in my opinion, is for the diamond supply chain. For 20 years, they've been trying to keep conflict diamonds, blood diamonds, out of circulation. And they've had a process for every time diamonds move from like the mine to a middleman to a somebody who like works it into a ring to the actual retail network. Every time that happens, a bunch of paperwork is filed with a organization in Antwerp, right? As well as like a stamp is put on a certificate that follows along with that diamond. The problem is that's easy to kind of forge. It's really hard if you're receiving this to tell, like, are these legit stamps, that sort of thing. And so the diamond supply chain project is a late stage pilot. It'll go into production next year. And it's basically a way for each diamond to see the history of whose hands did it flow through. And if you're anybody in that chain and you're buying diamonds and you can't go, this diamond matches to this entry in that ledger, you shouldn't buy it because its history is unknown and you might have trouble selling it, right?
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah. And then crypto kitties. And I think we've got
the good stuff.
Do we have a larger version of that graphic, or is that a little hard to see?
I think that's all we got.
If you type in cryptocurrencies to Google, you'll get to a website. Cryptocurrencies are a app written. I'm sorry, CryptoKitties. Thank you. Are a special kind of DApp, a distributed application, written for the Ethereum network. And you go and you spend a little bit of money, and you get this cat, and it's got 250 different ways in which it can be different. Its color, its stripes, its eyes, that sort of thing. And it's kind of like Tamagotchi. You feed it, you care for it, spending little bits of money here and there, and you can sell it to other people. You can also breed it with somebody else's cat and end up with a better cryptocurrency, right?
But you can't pet it.
There's
a useless cat.
No, not yet.
And then there's a CryptoKitties marketplace where you can buy and sell these. And the most expensive, was that one of our questions?
Ready, $12 million in processed sales.
Yep.
$120,000 digital cat was sold.
Yep.
That is crazy. All the other applications are incredible. You know what? Something that I really find interesting about this is, are we going to do like crypto puppies and crypto tigers and crypto milkshakes and like whatever else you want to think of, like crypto wives?
Yeah, let's just make crypto
wives. That sounds like murder. You put your wife in the crypt.
Is this because one of the ways that my mind wanders a lot is it wanders a lot into AI and automation, and a lot of people that have repetitive tasks will be losing their work, and there will need to be some sort of creative endeavor for people, like CryptoKitties, that they can actually frickin' make money on.
Well, like crypto cat sitting. So I'm just going to stare at the screen while you're away, make sure your crypto kitty doesn't go anywhere. Where's my ice cream?
So I never once thought that crypto would, and blockchain, I never thought that this would explode into a bunch of creative endeavors that people could go and pursue to actually make money.
Right.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's cool. It's also somewhat like baseball card trading or like back to the Beanie Babies thing, right? Like there are segments of the economy, like gaming is a big thing, right? Like which you identified, right, as being a really cool part of this. And the more time we spend in VR, the more time we spend building, you know, like IP, right, digital assets, like the more we'll need systems like this to actually prove who owns what and what you've accomplished, what you're able to do. Really.
11% of all transactions on the Ethereum network are CryptoKitties.
Well,
That's
in the
amazing.
last few days or last week.
Do people who own Ethereum, do they like procreate? Do they breed? I just feel like this is like the death of humanity.
Bet there's some people out here who own Ethereum.
Does anyone here own a CryptoKitty? Oh, you do.
Do?
Sweet.
Awesome.
Do you have
How much does it cost to get a CryptoKitty?
What's yours look like?
A few bucks. How's your dating life, though? That's what I didn't know, buddy. Oh, you're married. Oh, he put a ring on it. Sweet. Was that pre or post CryptoKitty? Pre. You see, yeah.
Is your wife next to you?
That's just a.
That's a crypto ass wife, dude.
Oh, that's very sweet. Oh, wow.
Wow, you two must be fun to hang out with.
He might give you some cryptocurrency. Oh, wow.
So is this gonna be a whole new fad of like walking into a bar and being like, "Hey, babe, you want to breed CryptoKitties?"
Wow.
That'd be
All right.
crazy if she was like, "My CryptoKitty shits on yours."
Yeah.
Like it's not even good enough to. Never mind.
All right. Let's go on.
Here we go.
What percent, and this gets to the food question,
Yep.
what percent of fish sold in markets and restaurants in the U.S. is mislabeled?
All right, we have an answer here.
I guess about 65%.
What do you say?
65?
65.
Lower.
Lower.
Oh. Wait, where did that come from?
40%?
40.
A little bit lower.
Ooh.
Try 39.
35.
I'll give it. Eureka, 33%.
33%? All right, you got it again.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry to be a 5% stickler. No, it's yeah. So it turns out there's a lot more organic food. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
All right, my friend. We have for you. You've already won something. How's that pizza doing up there, by the way?
It worthwhile, Satoshi. Yeah.
That's worth what? Are you keeping it warm?
Yep.
That's very good. That's very good. We have for you. We happen to have in our show some extra Bitcoin that we have here. Look, this is see, it has a B on it. It has an actual B on it. It looks like a Bitcoin. I figure, you know, everyone's so hyped about Bitcoin, you could actually fool somebody into thinking these are Bitcoins. This is Bitcoin gold right here. Well, that's silver and that's copper. These are Bitcoins right here. Your goal is to try to actually fool somebody and to buy something using those coins.
$10.
All right, buddy, go for it.
Right. So an amazing amount of fraud happens in food supply chains, right? Famously, there are more people who buy organic fruit and vegetables than is actually grown, right? And in the fish world, there's a tremendous amount of what's sold as, you know, salmon or tuna or you know, high-end fish that when you actually eat it at the restaurant turns out to be something else, right? And there are a tremendous number of different international organizations that are both trying to fight that problem and also fight catching of fish in illegal places, right? There's all these quotas, all of these regions of the world because fish stocks are depleting, right? And we run the risk of running out of fish to be able to consume and everything. So there are a number of organizations working together to try to establish, and this is the fishing fleets, these are the processors, these are IT companies, but it's also organizations associated with the United Nations, working together to try to set up a common ledger, a common blockchain for tracking fish and the catching of fish through the supply chain, all the way from the nets on the boats that catch it, and the sensors that tell you where those nets were, pulling in GPS coordinates, pulling in the weight of what's caught in these nets, to where it's brought into the harbor, to where it's processed, and then all the way to the supply chain, to the point where, at the very least, the supermarkets like Whole Foods, et cetera, that care about proper labeling of their fish, maybe even the consumers at some point, they'd be able to scan something and get that history of where that product came from.
But we're not like putting a tracking chip in the fish that I could pull out of my teeth when I'm eating the salmon at the dinner. You don't think so?
And this also really helps farmers as well, because a farmer can produce a couple tons of bananas or whatever, and then this really good banana farmer, you know, really good, really well known, and sometimes people could say, no, I got him these bananas from that farm, but you don't actually know if the bananas were gotten from that farm or
It's
not.
for banana reputation. That's very important.
And to be
for
clear,
all
there's
foods,
still,
you know, that includes more expensive foods like Kobe beef, caviars, whatever as well.
now, there's still a garbage in, garbage out problem, right? If something comes into the supply chain and it's claimed to have come from one place and actually from another, that's still a problem. But at least once it's in the supply chain, you have this airtight kind of tracing for that product from beginning to end. And you could actually create, using these systems, a business model for whistleblowing, a business model for investigative journalism to try to catch people who are trying to perform fraud, right?
Big paintings, and you're like, I've only made 10 of these, but then someone's trying to say, oh, I have this 11th version or this 12th version. But again, so this is a very interesting thing that in the supply chain world, for food and for all these other products.
Now, some of you are probably sitting there going, you know, if I wanted to build this for somebody, I could just build a really big central database, host it on Amazon or Google somewhere, and just have APIs, just, you know, like everything centralized, and that'll be cheaper, it'll be faster, it'll be more scalable. The answer is yes. Any blockchain use case you could do centralized. And the reason we don't do it centralized is we don't like somebody playing God in the center of our markets, right? We want a distributed system that people can trust, that people can see. There's adversarial kind of relationships between everybody, but at the core is a set of facts that we can't dispute.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
And just a cool fact is that the Abu Dhabi Louvre Museum bought Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi for $450 million.
Or 3 Bitcoin.
3 Bitcoins. There we go. Hey, doing himself. Next question. Here we go.
How many people in the world do not have a government-issued ID?
Anybody here not have a government-issued ID?
Yeah, does anyone actually not? That's really interesting.
You had to show it to get in, right?
I'm curious.
Hold on.
We got 3 billion right here.
You all are much more pessimistic than I thought. You'd be lower than that.
Lower, okay.
But still a bad number.
1 billion.
I love how you say
Eureka.
Eureka. Is that his accent?
It's actually 1.1 billion, but it's close enough.
You have to laugh maniacally when you say that, by the way.
1 billion.
1 billion. Oh, right. Was that something you actually just knew, or was that a guess?
That's a guess.
Grabs the mic out of it. Wait, that's your real voice?
Doesn't it?
Wait, that's real?
Wait. Say 1 billion again.
1 billion.
Wow. What offshore accounts is your money stored? That's basically this. Did you invest in cryptocurrency? Do you?
Not yet, but I'm considering.
Dude, you were great in Despicable Me.
That's very good. You nailed it. Excellent, man. Well, I'm glad you're thinking of it, because we have for you Mastering Bitcoin for Dummies.
Oh, perfect.
I'm not saying you're a dummy. I'm just saying it's the next prize we're handing out. So that's what. Very good.
Evan's scared of him.
I'm just a little weird. What do you do, by the way?
I'm a social worker for hospice patients.
Okay, very nice. That's very good. Give him a round of applause. But what if that's a lie and he's a Russian hitman?
The only person here going to heaven.
Yeah. I'm afraid he's gonna put a sniper
dude
rifle.
Definitely has sharks in a tank that he drops.
So why does this number matter? Why are we talking about this? So there are a lot of countries out there that just don't have the infrastructure to be able to provide the same kinds of things we get when you get a passport or a driver's license or a social security number. And when you don't have an identity, for all intents and purposes, from the perspective of being able to own property, being able to get health benefits, being able to get entitlements to things, being able to have, go to school, you don't exist for all intents and purposes to so many organizations out there. And it's doubly impacted if you're a refugee, right? Where you're fleeing from, you left a lot of things behind, you're going into this unknown world and you're trying to establish a new identity, right? And establish a new personhood, and that requires having some sort of identity. So there's quite a few projects out there that have been extending digital identities to individuals.
Let's talk about Aadhaar.
In India, you have this system, which this is a picture of, called the Aadhaar system, which was a top-down, centralized, but still pretty successful digital system to give digital identities to 1.3 billion people. And it's meant hundreds of millions of people who previously were not on that, were not citizens, really. We're not a part of the world to be able to have access to health services and benefits and that sort of thing.
In 10 years. It only took them 10 years.
From like concept implementation. I mean, it still sounds like a lot, but it was a tremendous effort. The problem is it's centralized.
Yeah, and there's 99% of kids that are 18 plus, young adults now and adults, are on this database, which is incredible. Like you said, amount of people that have access to healthcare, access to loans or education or what have you. It's so crucial.
And they have like a card or just have like a barcode
they have a
slapped to their
card.
wrist?
They also have, it's also biometrics based.
Okay.
So they can, I think it's fingerprint and retina scan.
Right.
And that
wow,
means,
that's...
Yeah.
And a retina scan?
Right. Well, many of them
Minority
are illiterate,
Report,
right?
actually.
So, yeah. So
many of them are what?
Are not literate, right?
Oh, what?
Yeah. So like, that's...
But in
India.
Hindi.
In
Hindi,
I mean,
they're literate in
they
Hindi.
speak, but they don't, right, they speak Hindi, but they're not able to read write. Yeah, there's a lot of people.
Oh my God.
Well, and that's
Someone just, Eureka, exactly, figured that out.
So much work left to do.
That's the
Wow.
that's just like the image of privilege right there. It's like,
But how can they shuffle me around in their taxi if they don't?
So there's a lot of countries that are looking at this example of India going, hey, this is cool, and wanting to repeat it. But there's a lot of people also worried about the privacy implications of these big central databases, especially in a country where the caste system is not that long ago, right, and arguably still in effect. And other countries that are run by despotic governments or pretend democratic governments, right? And a lot of us here who would resist the idea of a big, using our social security numbers as the basis for financial records or education records or other things, right? So a lot of people are working together to try to figure out, can we use distributed ledgers to do a decentralized approach to identity? Well, there's this kind of idea out there, you can Google it, self-sovereign identity. And the idea is, rather than you being an entry in a central database, you have a couple of things about you, some keys, some biometrics, maybe a passphrase, but something that you keep close to you and something that looks kind of like a wallet, right? And in that wallet, you get certificates. You get a certificate from the government. You get a certificate from the university that you went to, the testing that you graduated. You get a certificate, as a driver's license. You get other things that attest to certain things about you that you can then decide to share with other people. And what's recorded in the ledger is signatures and hashes and all the things you do to prove the integrity of these records, but you don't store these records in the central database. You just store enough for people to be able to prove it later, for individuals to prove that they are who they say they are. And for this to be built bottoms up rather than top down like in India.
So what happens if the power goes out? Are you fucked? Essentially, it's like
batteries. Solar,
batteries, okay,
yeah,
but
we're kind of past the point where electricity is
yeah.
table stakes for
We're in
society.
trouble.
Yeah.
This is really important for safety. You actually just did a Eureka moment when you guys weren't in here, where you described how people could have land passed down to them over time, and then all of a sudden a dictator or someone just comes and says, fuck you, that's my land now, and just with a gun, and you can't do anything. And if you don't have any record that shows that you own that land on a distributed network, even better, then you're screwed. And so this is a good case point for you being, your identity being somewhere on a ledger, so that way if somebody comes and tries to say that you don't exist, that you at least do exist. There is a record of you.
And especially in refugee environments, right, where, again, people are trying to establish themselves in a new location. And in refugee camps where you don't have a central government at all, these are failed states. And so it's the aid organizations and others operating in these camps that can issue these identities. That's one reason the UN in particular is interested in this kind of thing.
That's so interesting. The UN is buckling down on this. I like it.
Yeah.
That's good. It's really good.
All right,
Let's do it.
here we go.
Last one.
Last question.
How can blockchains be used for healthcare? Anyone want to throw out, let's say, 2 different ways that it could be used?
Medical records.
Okay, yes.
But I don't, I can't think of. Just HIPAA compliance, like keeping everything confidential. Like your prescription, not just your medical records, like your test results, but
I'll give it
what
to you.
your disease
Eureka.
is.
Yeah.
Eureka.
Awesome. Yes. Go for it.
All righty.
Good job.
All right. Do you work in the medical field?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Nice.
And do you are you also like investing in cryptocurrency or blockchain?
Not at all.
Would you be interested if it came into your workplace?
If it was used for patient confidentiality and got helped with HIPAA, because that is one of the biggest problems I deal with in trying to help my clients every day.
Yeah.
And HIPAA is, we're not talking about hips here. We're talking about what exactly?
That's the law that governs privacy for patients. And so it ends up being either something that is not managed well, and I've had lots of information just given to me, and nobody really verifies that I have a right to get that information sometimes, or run into a huge brick wall in trying to prove that I have the right to do it, and I can't actually help someone. So it's one extreme or the other, and if there was a clear, simple system, that would be great.
You just need somebody's retina, basically. We scan that. All right, well, we're giving you the Internet of Money. This is a collection of talks here. This will introduce you to all about cryptocurrency. Give her a round of applause.
There's audio. Can we piggyback on her point a little more? That's so crucial. It makes it really difficult to do this whole accessing, and it's hard to tap in and access my health records.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it might sound ironic that we're talking here about a distributed ledger, something very public, something widespread that everybody sees, and using it to talk about securing and making it easy to share something that is actually very intensely personal, right? Like, whether it's your blood type or an HIV test result, right? You really don't want that shared with everybody. Well, today, most patients have no agency over that data that's collected about them. It's stored in databases, either at the clinic level or the insurer or some other place, and they really don't feel like they have a connection to it, right? So take what I talked about with digital identity, right? You've got these wallets, you've got this thing that is close to you that's helping you manage information about you. Well, that can be certificates that you want to share, like, again, your diploma, but it could also be medical data, right? And it could be that if you put the patient at the center of sharing these records, or their caregivers, right, who you work with, I'm sure, or their children if they're elderly parents, right, and give them the ability to decide who this gets shared with, allow them to prove this prescription actually did come from a doctor, right, because it's got their signature on it and the hash of that was recorded in the ledger, right, and to audit who you've shared that data with, decide to revoke it. All of these things are what people are working on now to try to reinvent how health data is shared in the healthcare industry, which, I mean, today it's very broken. There's a lot of broken incentives. If we can use these technologies to simultaneously make life easier for the businesses and companies that need access to that data, but most importantly for the patients and get the patients behind it, there's a lot of real optimism that we can end up with healthier lives and be able to take care of ourselves and the people we love when they're sick a bit more easily.
Aww. That was very sweet. That's very nice. That's very nice.
Nobody believes you can be nice.
That's true.
It sounds so ingenuine.
I know. That's just my voice. I don't know what to do about that.
James, can we dim the lights real quick? Thank you. Let's go through this just real quick, because I think this is a good way to explain what you're talking about.
So on the left, and this is just something we stole off the internet. So, but on the left, you've got like a place where somebody actually has gotten treatment there, or a caregiver, or somebody's entering PHI into a local health IT system, an EHR system. Sorry, personal health information. That's like your blood type, your HIV test result, your summary of a doctor's visit, that sort of thing. The idea is that it's fed into this blockchain network, a distributed network, and then it can be accessed and contributed to by other organizations that you as an individual go and visit. And when you visit, say, a specialist, or you move and you visit a new doctor, you present to that new organization a key that proves you are who you say you are. That's a private key. It's probably more like a public key. Regardless, by showing who you are, then there's access, there's information about that on the ledger that can be tied to that, and now your provider can ask, can I get access to this health record? Can I get access to this test result, et cetera? And this keeps the patient involved. This keeps them close to that data, and keeps those organizations from being able to take that away, for the same reason why no one can take away, the ledger of what bitcoins you own, for example. One important thing as well, often these kind of networks will be, unlike the cryptocurrency networks that are big and public, these will often be shared ledgers between healthcare organizations and patient organizations and others, so that HIPAA can be respected, so that if information is inadvertently shared, it can be rolled back, that sort of thing.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, lights up.
James, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. This was a good graphic, I think.
Woo, all right.
Fast.
The heat's coming back. Excellent. All right, and now
time for...
You've asked questions to all of us. Now we have a question for you. This is our bonus question for you, Brian. If you were a Bitcoin millionaire, but could only spend your Bitcoin on one of these top-selling items on the online black market, which would it be? Can you all see this, or should it be a little darker? You can see it? Okay. Would it be human body parts? That's apparently number one.
I may need a liver at some
This
point.
is in descending order of popularity. Exotic pets and animals.
If horses count. Yeah.
Cosmetics and plastic surgery. Prescription drugs and narcotics. Weapons and bombs. Sperm. Human trafficking. Crude oil. Pirated media and computer software.
I think I try to split it across all. Maybe not
Well,
the sperm,
not
but
all.
of the
I don't think all is a good answer. I think you should be selective. There's only a couple here that will make you look good.
My wife rides horses, so and I'm sure there's an exotic horse that
Okay.
costs around that amount of money. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so you-
I thought for sure he'd go
Exotic
human
pets.
trafficking.
Yeah, apparently not. No, he's
Because of the
Like a
ponytail,
rare
you know?
bird
But okay.
and a snake or something.
So you want an exotic animals you perhaps can't buy elsewhere, but you'd buy them on the black market.
Right, and I have a 2.5-year-old daughter too who really loves animals. So I'm sure there's like an endangered couple of species that I
Wow. Okay. Would anyone else do that?
Why don't you just get your wife a crypto horse?
Could do that.
Crypto, yeah.
Wow. All right. So no sperm then, huh?
I got enough.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you. That's good to know.
I'm good.
Give it up for Brian, everybody. He's got it up, wasn't he? Great. Give it up for Andrew and Torio, and for yourselves being all smart nerds.
Maybe a couple words on the Electronic Frontier Foundation and net neutrality. Kind of, this is an important subject, so I think we're all kind of like, oh, like what's going to happen? What's going on?
Well, it's kind of a bummer, right? I mean, yeah, so net neutrality, there'll be a vote on Thursday by the FCC to basically say, we don't care, we don't do anything there. And what it means is that, you know, depending on the ISP you use, you might see a little pop-up banner ad come up one day when you try to visit, you know, a website that's unusual, say, that says...
Pornhub.
You know, yes, you can buy now access to this with the, you know, you only have to buy the $90 extra per month premium package to access all these different, you know, non-traditional websites or whatever, or even get access to Netflix, right? They could charge you an extra $7 or $10 for premium access to Netflix, right? So the real problem with net neutrality is, you know, most of us don't have options for local providers. Although here in San Francisco, there's a few. There's Sonic if you have access to it. There's Monkey Brains if you have access to it, and a dial-up and Pigeon and probably others mechanisms. But that's the real problem. And so the EFF has been fighting for net neutrality. It's tough because we're also libertarian, and so we don't necessarily always believe that regulation is the right way to get things done. So we've tried to have a pretty nuanced kind of message about this. But
what is that nuanced message?
The nuanced message is we need both. You know, if you're going to allow telco companies or companies like Comcast to own a local city, like be the only option in a city, right, and not share their wires, right, which they used to be required to do. In the 90s, the reason why we had an internet explosion was anybody could use the phone wires and provide a dial-up ISP service on top of it, right? You can't do that with the coaxial cable that comes from Comcast into that house, right, into your house. And so we don't have a competitive market. And Comcast could charge whatever they want because they own that plant, even though it's public property in a way that they've run these wires over. So the kind of gambit was you let them do that, but you have to have them be common carriers and not care what the bits are flowing over that pipe. Now that trade-off is being broken, now maybe we need to get back to talking again about competitive local access in markets.
And if this doesn't move towards a place of net neutrality, let's say that it does move towards a place of Comcast being able to decide how much I pay to access certain websites, is it a split in revenue between that website and ISP, or is it?
It's whatever Comcast wants to do because they
agrees
play
with-
God in that circumstance,
So they
right?
can-
And there are, hopefully they don't block Tor, right, which would be one way to route around those filters, or VPNs or
Yeah.
those sorts of things. So maybe the community, maybe we can fight back by figuring out ways to defeat these kinds of filters and plans.
And how can we do that? Maybe we.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, this could all be a concern over something that doesn't actually happen. Hopefully, Comcast and these others realize that if they really do get kind of mean and cruel about this, they will engender a backlash that would wipe them out.
Wow.
Right?
That's a good way to look at it.
That's that, and
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Destroy them.
And it's on you as consumers to help make that clear to them, right? I mean, I've got monkey brains now. I'm turning it on, and as soon as Comcast, if this passes, if Comcast does the slightest thing to kind of hint that they're going down this path, I'll cancel the $130 a month I spend with them or something like that, because there's alternatives now here in San Francisco for some of us, not yet all of us.
Good.
All right.
Should we maybe take an audience question? We have
Any final questions before we close out?
Wait,
Okay.
we had an. Let's go back here.
So I'm kind of curious, what would stop big companies like Facebook or Amazon or Google or Apple? They're all in the payment game right now, right? So what would stop them from creating their own cryptocurrency network and their own exchange, and maybe even granting every single one of their users a small amount to kickstart it? And would that be a bad thing?
Not necessarily. I mean, today on Facebook, you can send money through Facebook Messenger. And how many of you use WeChat here? Okay. I mean, if you're in China, you have to use WeChat to like hail a cab. To people pay their taxes through WeChat. There's so these are very natural platforms to introduce and embed captive currencies, right? And it's kind of up to consumers. Do they want something that is, a pile of money that maybe they can't pull out of that system? I mean, right now in Facebook, it is denominated in dollars. So in theory, if somebody pays you in Facebook, you can put that into your bank account, right? And I think they kind of have to do that. But nothing prevents these big centralized systems from emerging, and that is a risk. And hopefully, whether it's through cryptocurrencies or other applications of blockchain technology, we find a way to get us all back to common systems, open standards, and avoid these kind of cul-de-sacs or these kind of traps where our value gets trapped in somebody's system.
Right. All right. One more final question.
All right. We had a couple hands go up. Who hasn't
Somebody who hasn't
spoken?
spoken.
These guys, yeah, you guys have talked.
Yeah, well, anyone has
All
a
right,
question,
fine,
raise
we'll
your
give it to
hand.
Robin.
Okay, so I work in finance, and my question is, Alan made this comment about eventually no more Bitcoins being mined and becoming a deflationary currency, and that's right where my interest is. I'm trying to figure out if any cryptocurrency will ever be able to track inflation and GDP in such a way as to actually become a true medium of exchange.
So there is an hour, or at least probably 10 hours worth of conversation and lecture about monetary policy and theory that spans between two camps. One camp that says currency should be hard and there should only be so many of a certain thing, and that when you lose that, you end up with Venezuela or Zimbabwe, where runaway inflation means no one can hold on to anything anymore, like real cash, right? Because it just, inflation goes haywire. The other extreme is to say a little bit of inflation isn't a bad thing, because a little bit of inflation means if you have a mortgage on a house and you're paying that debt off, that debt gets cheaper over time. Slowly, you don't want that to get cheaper too quickly, but with an expanding currency, people actually want to spend it. They want to invest it. With a deflationary currency, and arguably Bitcoin is here, they'd rather hold on to it, right? Hodling is the kind of cultish rallying cry in this community. And what it's meant is there's fewer places that take Bitcoin for payment today than there were a year ago, right? And so this is a philosophical battle. And I think there's people in San Francisco and our community here who have, political beliefs we need to think about in the context of this kind of monetary system. Maybe a little bit of inflation is a good idea, and that is one of the things some of those other alternative cryptocurrencies account for. Is like Ethereum. Ethereum has no hard cap. It'll add a little bit each year. There are other currencies that where you know, if you hold 10 of them, you'll get an 11th one once a year, right? I mean, it's like there's all these interesting permutations, and we'll figure out what works. And it could be that a diversity of these different things allows the market to figure out what actually is optimal. So good question, though.
Awesome.
All right. All right, great. Let's give it another round of applause.
Applause.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.